This is the Final Word Cricket Podcast, Season 16, Episode 8. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins talking to you, looking at each other. This is the way it works. It's Episode 8 because Episode 7 was Adam in Ireland with Warren Dutram, who runs Cricket Island over there, talking about what has been going wrong in that part of the world. A lot of bad headlines out of there over the last couple of months. Why don't we start there? That conversation got into pretty deep into a lot of what is going on in Ireland at the moment.
It did, yeah. It was good. I was really happy with how it came out and how it was reported. You know, these things sometimes with us don't sort of feed into the news cycle quite so much, but this one did because it had been a while since Warren had done one of these long sit-down interviews. And yeah, we spoke about everything really, from the Australia series being cancelled through to the company car story, which has been hanging around for the last few weeks, to their ongoing funding challenges, to their vision, to other challenges they've had around ground politics and not being able to have their own facilities. So it all tied together pretty well. I think it all made a lot of sense. And always grateful to Warren for letting us have those kinds of conversations, even if this one wasn't, quite so geared towards the positive achievements. It's more about the challenges. And it got a run on even ABC Radio, Jeff, I'm told, gave it a run, which is an unusual place for our interviews to feature. But I suppose that reference point to Australia now not touring Ireland in September, as was previously planned, make it newsworthy in that part of the world, our part of the world.
And such a disappointing thing when you think about how hard it has been to get Australia to tour smaller cricket countries. Just so many opportunities that have been passed up and so little apparent appetite to do it, which is, hopefully changing a little bit under Nick Hockley's watch. But this would have been one of the few actual putting that to the test, one of the few occasions of putting that to the test.
And you can tell they're kind of gutted about it. It all comes down to the profound loss they would have banked by running that series, and that's to do with TV rights, which we've spoken about on the show before, but also the cost of them having to hire a facility to do it properly at Malahide, and that's no longer viable. So the fact they've got to host South Africa offshore in UAE later this year kind of goes to that. This is not like going to be, there's no short-term fix here, but the good news is their ICC funding does go up dramatically in the last couple of years of this agreement that they've got with the ICC. So they should have more opportunities, but it's pretty clear, and Warren said this, they need to find better ways to fund themselves and not be as reliant on the distribution they get from ICC. And also they can't exclusively depend on government to build on this ground. That'll unlock everything, I think. Once the ground's built, it'll free them up and liberate them in ways they haven't been before. But for the time being, they're still in this kind of awkward spot, because this series with Australia would have been perfect, right? It's exactly what we've spoken about for years, about teams going to England, stopping in via Ireland on the way through to, I don't want to be patronising, but kind of use it as a warm-up to an extent, and demonstrate they can be better global citizens, like Nick Hockley here, who clearly, as Warren said in the interview, Nick was trying his best to try and find a solution with Cricket Island. Was there a way they could help work it out with the funding and so on? But unfortunately, there was no way of squaring this one. So the international schedules that have gone out don't have Australia there, but hopefully it's a postponement, and the next time that Australia are in this part of the world, they can find a way to play in Ireland.
They do manage to find ways to play in England pretty often, so you would think the opportunities will come up. You also managed to play in Ireland. You have done what the Australian team couldn't do. You took an Oval Dream Boys team that, as far as I can tell, pretty much ended up being a final word 11 in terms of personnel. I'm not willing to claim it until I find out if you won or not, but I got the impression from what I was seeing online that things went pretty well.
Yeah, we had 2 wins. So we won at Pembroke on the Friday, which is a gorgeous club, and it's a real privilege to play there. That's one of their top flight clubs in Dublin. And we played a timed game on the Sunday, a declaration game, and we won with 7 balls to spare. So get to sing the song twice, and a good group. And you're right, I think probably of the touring group, maybe 8 or 9 have played for the final word at some point or another, or certainly a final word adjacent, and played in the ODB final word game. So that was really cool.
Did you?
Yeah, when I came,
you trained on the 7 balls to spare feels very good. That's very in line with, like, almost every final word game has been right down to the end. So is that the one? I saw somebody said that you took a bag. You took 5+. Is that in this win, or is that at the end of this one?
Yeah, it was. Got ended with 6. We needed to take. I think we needed to take 7 wickets in the last 9 overs or something like that.
Oh,
And Sheehan, who we work with and who has been a final word player as well, picked up a couple in that, and we were basically bowled them out from either end at the end.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
we had. I think there was 7 balls left when the final wicket was taken. That's exciting. Yeah, it's a nice thing to do. And I link it back to I don't think I'm taking bags of wickets without without the assistance of Hinders down at Serious Cricket. Now this is the link here, Jeff.
Yeah.
I had a little coaching session with him, which will come out on YouTube. I think on Friday they're going to put it out.
Mm.
We've been
You
working with
remodeled
Serious
your
Cricket.
action. He is the University of Western Australia for you.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I've been working on a few things in the last 3 weeks, and he just helps. He just helps sharpen up my thinking on a couple of technical points, and that felt a lot better at the bowling crease. Rhythmical,
Okay.
you could even say at
Okay.
times. The pace was better. The dip was better.
Yeah.
But yeah, Serious Cricket, they're helping my game. They can help yours as well down there in Hampshire. 10% off all their kit, which is great. SeriousCricket.co.uk. Final word 24 is the code. They're going to keep it open even after the end of April, I'm told, Jeff. So get involved now, but it might be if you jump on there in the second week of May, it might still be running. That's compounded on top of the other discount we've talked about in other weeks. But yes, to take wickets on tour, to get the win, sing the song twice, it's all nice stuff.
You too could take 6 for in your 40s as you embark on
nearly am.
All right. Okay. I have to get to something that I've been very excited to talk to you about for the last few days, which is Chamari Athapaththu. This is one of those innings where word starts coming in that something exciting is happening, and you see the momentum build. 195 not out to beat South Africa in Potchefstroom. What a game! What a moment! The reigning player of the year, having just turned 34, and seemingly just expanding the reach of her powers, and certainly the consistency of their application. When did you get word of the fact that Chamari was on one?
I think she was on about 90 odd, and I saw a tweet to the effect of this could happen because they're chasing 300
and 2
and a bit.
Yeah,
and as is so often the case with Sri Lanka's women, if Chamari Athapaththu is in the middle, they're a chance of winning.
Yeah.
Started sort of seeing that she was encroaching upon the target. And Jeff, that might be where you pick up the story, and we'll go full circle in a minute.
What I like is that it's not only her these days. Increasingly, as Sri Lanka's women have had a bit more success over the last couple of years and some significant wins, particularly away from home, there has been support from elsewhere. This game is absolutely ludicrous, and it's ludicrous because it starts with one of the great women's ODI innings that is not the one that Athapaththu played, it's the one that Laura Wolvaardt played, which is sort of destined to be one of the forgotten great innings, I think. The frustration thereof. This is a masterclass from her. This is the way that remember watching Laura Wolvaardt in 2017 when she was Teen Wolf, when she was opening the batting for South Africa at 18, I think it was. And she was all through the offside. She was cover point. She'd hit the fielders. She wouldn't score very quickly. This innings from her, she makes 184 not out batting first here. Not a lot through the offside either, but it's not slogging through the onside. There's a lot of on drives. There's a lot of whips through mid-wicket along the ground, classical onside sort of stuff. And then as she goes deeper into the innings, this sort of T20 development that she'd added to her career over the last few years comes out, and she does start hitting over the leg side more viciously. She's sweeping well, pulling well. She's playing spin really well, which used to be a weakness. South Africa get to 301 for 5. There's a few 30s in support from Goodall and Cap and Nadine de Klerk. And probably just as well that Laura Wolvaardt makes 184 not because she did run out a couple of partners along the way. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you get to a score like that. The 4th highest score ever in women's ODIs. Great. Everything's going well. And then a couple of hours later, it's the 5th highest score in women's ODIs because Athapaththu has got the 3rd biggest. So only the 2 double centuries, the Belinda Clark and the Amelia Kerr doubles ahead of Athapaththu. And I think it's uncontroversial to say that Athapaththu's innings is a much better innings in terms of the quality of the opposition and the pressure of a run chase. Now, and bear in mind, this is coming out to bat after she's already bowled her 10 overs as well and taken a wicket during the first innings. Into the 3rd over, they've only made 1 run, the 2 openers. And then she goes over the top against Marizanne Cap for a boundary, gets going, back foot punch off Ayabonga Kaka. Hits her first 6 in the 9th over, hitting Mazabata Class just past the sight screen, straight down the ground. And interestingly, like, she's not as leg side as I've seen with other innings that she's played. You know, not everything's going over mid wicket. A lot of it's going straight. She's straight driving a lot, but powerfully down the ground. She's hitting 6s straight down the ground, and then she's playing like touch shots, dabbing behind point. And you know, things are looking pretty good at this stage. And then Delmi Tucker comes into the game, gets an LBW with her off spin, takes a really good catch at backward point diving. And then Kaka comes on and takes 2 in 3 balls. So suddenly they've lost 4. They've got 126 on the board in the 21st over. So they're going at about a run a ball, which is the required rate, but they've lost 4 quickly. And that's when Sri Lanka usually fall away. Once trouble starts, it continues. But Nilashka Silva, who has through most of her career, she's batted down, not right down the order, but like 7, 8, 9 sort of thing. She's been up at 6 more recently. She makes her first half century, first one day 50, which is a great time to do it. Takes 71 balls to do it, but that doesn't matter because Athapaththu's going like a steam train at the other ends. But at the point that the 4 wickets fall, Athapaththu's on 85. And so she adds another 110 herself. They put on 179, I think it was, for the partnership. There's one drop catch in the deep, but, you know, there usually is when somebody makes a huge score. And she keeps on sort of hitting these extraordinary off drives. She's not over attacking. She's just waiting for the ball that she wants to smack and then destroying it, and just carries on. Finishes with a 6, 195 not. They're done with about 5 overs to go. Had they had the full allotment to face, she might have made 250 the way she was going. This is the only run chase of 300 ever in women's 50-over cricket. Nobody's done it. None of the great Australian teams have done it. I guess they haven't played teams who could have posted 300 against them most of the time. But Sri Lanka's best ever chase before this was 257, so they destroyed that record. They'd only chased more than 200 5 times in their entire, the country's entire 50-over career. The top 11 individual scores for Sri Lanka's women are all Chamari Athapaththu. Like,
wow,
it's just so much about this is just incredible. And, you know, we've enjoyed watching her work for so long, but this just feels like a reward for all of your hard work. So the first one day in this series was washed out. So that means they draw the series 1-1 after they won the T20s 2-1, touring South Africa, which is a massive result for Sri Lanka. And yeah, you know, she's proved that she deserves to be regarded as the best at what she's doing, at least right at the moment.
So all the zoomed out stuff with Athapaththu, right? Like, she nearly retired from international cricket a few weeks ago. Well, at least she was foreshadowing that she might after the T20 World Cup. And look, she may, because the financial situation for Sri Lanka's women, I know that Andrew Fidel Fernando did some number crunching on this last year when they beat the England side in England in the T20 series. It was along the lines of, I think from memory, $250 match payments. Like, it's not much money at all, right? And you compare that to what you can earn as a full-time member of the T20 women's circuit. That is attractive for her. Now, she can balance both at the moment, but it might reach the point with a more congested schedule that she can't. So there's that to acknowledge. The second thing is that she is now the number 1 batter in the world, according to the ICC. She's overtaken Sivabrunt, Mooney, Woolvart, in that top 5 that was just announced before we started recording. What an achievement to do that with these scarce resources. Players like Sivabrunt and Mooney are, to call them full-time professional, almost underplays how much investment has been put into their game over such a long stretch of time, whereas Chamari Athapaththu has been carrying her team on her back for 15 years. And all that pressure, all those expectations. And now they're winning these series. You know, we've gone through it recently, but what they did against New Zealand last year, what they've done here against South Africa, the incongruity is that they now go to the UAE where they start their T20 World Cup qualification bid in 2 days' time from now. We'll come to that in a little bit. But the fact that Sri Lanka, ranked 7 in the world, need to go through that process. So Athapaththu will go from having beaten one of the strongest bowling lineups in the world to playing a very different level of cricket over the next fortnight, but no less important, because getting to those global competitions is absolutely crucial for full member teams. So, what a player. A great individual achievement this week, but she needs to continue to be at her best to continue giving the Sri Lankan women a chance to be on this run they are at the moment, because, it's pretty cool. You think about where Sri Lanka's women were when we covered that 2017 World Cup, where we were at that game at Bristol and the 4 or 5 weeks that competition ran. They really were no chance of beating any of the big teams. They realistically were not winning games and giving themselves a chance to be in the mix for the semi-finals. Now I don't think they would make a semi-final, but they could finish top 6. And that's the kind of progress that we're hoping to see from a whole bunch of nations that sit beneath Australia, England and India in the women's game.
Or they, they pull a surprise on a couple of teams and they can make a semi-final. They knock off teams that are within their remit to knock off in New Zealand or South Africa or teams like that. I mean, remember they almost beat Australia in that 2020 tournament over in Perth, where Australia were chasing 133 maybe and got the wobbles and, it tended to be more a sort of, if they were a chance, it was as a bowling side defending a small total, that kind of thing, rather than as a chasing side. But if you can look at them chasing 300 in a 50 over game and think, well, there's always the possibility, I suppose. We've had the announcement come through about the women's county restructure in England. Yep. So the clubs have been named that will have a top tier. They're going to break down the women's structure across the 18 counties into 3 tiers. So Surrey will get one, unsurprisingly. The oval is there and the money is there. Hampshire get one because they've also got the money and the big ground out in the country. Lancashire, Nottinghamshire, Warwickshire. These are all test grounds. And then the others to get them are Durham, Somerset and Essex.
Yeah, and you can kind of play this all out. So work with me here, Jeff. So Surrey, Hampshire, Lancs, Notts, Warwickshire were always getting one. They were the 5 you could have inked in before we even started this whole process. It was interesting the last 3, and I'm just working through this logically. Durham and Somerset feel to me like the next, well, not feel to me, it's been reported widely, the next 2 teams that are likely to get 100 set up, 100 club, which will, in the fullness of time, become 100 franchise. Franchise isn't the right word at the moment because it's state-owned, but eventually these will be sold off and they will become franchises. Yep. Then because they aren't giving one to Middlesex, they kind of needed another Londonish sort of pull, thus Essex, right? So Essex become the 10th, become the 8th initially. Now, you step back and look at the teams that have missed out here. Yorkshire, Richard Gould, the chief executive of the ECB, has said that Yorkshire are not being punished for previous sins by not getting a side here. But it is quite a big one when you note how successful the Northern Diamonds have been. They've been the next best team in the regional structure since it started in 2020 after the Southern Vipers, who are like the Australia of domestic women's cricket, if you know what I mean. Like the Vipers win everything. But the Diamonds did pinch the 50 over. I say pinch, they played a great game. I did that game at Lords in 2022 to win the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy. So the fact that, and I know that the Diamonds aren't just Yorkshire, they're Durham as well. So Durham have effectively overtaken Yorkshire as the senior county in that region, which is controversial. And doubly so when you note that the Diamonds had a home game in the Rachel Hayhoe on Saturday and Durham didn't have a live stream for it. And people are like, well, come on. So I get why that looks bad. However, Yorkshire and Glamorgan, and this was unexpected and positive, are being taken to Tier 1 in 2027. So they're going to start with 8. They're immediately moving to 10. And Yorkshire and Glamorgan have already been told they are going to be the next 2 teams in. Now, Yorkshire, existing 100 team with the Superchargers, and Glamorgan, existing test ground too, of course, but still I'm just keeping in this framework of the 100. And Glamorgan have got one as well through the Welsh Fire. So Middlesex will be the only team or only ground. Middlesex MCC had a joint bid. The only 100 team without a women's top flight side. And the ECB have also said that by 2029 they'll bring 2 more in. So you'd think that there's a 90% chance that Middlesex MCC get one of those. Yeah. And then you've basically got a whole bunch of smaller counties playing for one spot. Derbyshire, Leicester, Kent, Sussex, Worcester, Gloucestershire, and Northants. So ironically, in a way, I say ironically, probably the wrong, I'll do that again. Bananas. And it's worth remembering, they tend to be the grounds that host women's internationals for England. You look in the last handful of years, in addition to Somerset and Essex, these are the clubs that have done a lot of heavy lifting hosting the England women because they tend not to use the test grounds, air quotes, for that. Sussex and Kent, we've spoken about recently on the podcast how important they've been to the England women's cricket story. So I would guess that one of those 2 would be most likely to get the 12th side. And this, in a way, comes back to what we discussed last week with Ben Bloom about those who have this underlying 100 test playing infrastructure being set up for long-term success, and other smaller counties who don't have the cash, and that gap between the rich and the poor growing. Well, this will be another manifestation of that with smaller counties who won't be as part of that funding stream. They won't be in tier one. In reality, if you've got 12 teams in tier one, there'll only be a tier two. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's where we end up in men's cricket as well, I should say. So, this I think is mirroring to a point where the men's game is going. And this has all been quite interesting, unpicking what we saw when it was announced last week.
I wonder also if leaving off the Middlesex MCC bid, I mean, on the face of it, you think, well, that's the most influential, that's Lords, that's the symbolism and all the rest of it. Wouldn't they want to go for that first? I wonder if it's also just to do with the lack of availability of that ground, because playing at Lords is so hotly contested. There are so many competing, and it's not just within elite professional cricket. It's across the board. There are so many groups of rich people and so on who lay claim to being able to get onto Lords for one thing or another. Whether setting up a team there would mean that team wouldn't actually get to play on Lords often enough, and it would become an optics problem and all the rest of it, if that's part of the reason for leaving them later on.
It's a fair point, and I was going to mention this later on, but I'll do so now. Middlesex were in the paper on Sunday, an interview with Andrew Cornish, their chief executive was, in relation to whether they might try and eventually have a new facility that isn't Lords to play games at, because Lords is a challenging ground to get availability at for them all the time. They have to play a couple of games at outgrounds due to international interests, and certainly in the 50-over stuff, they've been playing most of that out at Radlett in the last few years. Some of the blast gets played at Radlett as well at outgrounds. So Middlesex have said on the record that they put a subsequent statement out saying that if they were flush with cash right now, they might look into doing it right now, but their well-documented financial issues means that it's not a real thing at the moment. But the very idea that Middlesex might start to drift away a little bit from Lords. And yes, this wouldn't have been Middlesex alone. This bid was MCC as well. That might have given the women more of a chance to have played on that ground more often. But that decision-making process is an interesting one. And I know that Middlesex aren't happy. That's pretty clear from what they said in the aftermath. So, but I still think that they're the most likely to get the one of the two spots in 2029, Middlesex and one other, maybe Sussex or maybe Kent, who were both front and centre with their bids and both missed out this time around.
All right, the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy has got going. That's the England women's domestic 50-over competition. What's been happening there?
Well, a fair bit. Opening round on Saturday, Heather Knight was in the media before it saying, if you want to play in my team, you want to play in the national team, dominate this. It was quite a good message to send, I reckon. This is like, we've reached a stage in women's domestic cricket in England where, no kid gloves required, like just call it as it is. And Heather Knight. And there were more opportunities this week too, because quite a few of the England top flight players were at Tammy Beaumont's wedding to Callum. So there were more spots available than otherwise might have been the case. It looks like the social event of the year on Instagram, by the way, Jeff, with Tammy Beaumont. So congratulations to her. But there were a couple of lopsided results. The Diamonds thumped the Thunder at Durham. Mentioned that game already. The Thunder were bowled out for just 165. Katie Levick, bit of a leg spinning legend in the county game. She's 32 now, but she's taken more county wickets than anyone in the history of the game. Took 4 for 38. So I sort of wonder with a player like that. Leg spinners tend to be at their best in their 30s, and she takes boatloads of wickets every year. Anyway, started with a 4 for here. Erin Burns, the Aussie, 10 overs, 1 for 18. A lovely start for her. And the Diamonds won it comfortably. They lost just 1 wicket in their pursuit of 166. Lauren Winfield-Hill, the ever-reliable captain, 69 not out. And Holly Armitage, fresh off her England debut in New Zealand last month, made 61 not out from 71 balls. And yes, Armitage made an unusual debut where she was brought in to be a concussion sub. So she hasn't had the kind of, proper walkout, no, you're making your debut. But the very fact that she's in those squads reflects how well she's played for the Diamonds over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? If you're halfway through the game and then suddenly you're in, you've got a stat on the sheet that it counts as a game played, but you've had none of the lead up and no tearful photos with your parents and cap presentations and all the other bits and pieces that are now compulsory.
And seen as a leader, said before, she's captained that Diamond side since they started in 2020. The Sparks smashed the Blaze at Birmingham. The Starks made 13 for 9. Abby Freeborn, the keeper, made a ton late last season, started here with 53, and then the Blaze were all out 135. Only Nadine de Klerk, who was playing in that international against Athapaththu a couple of days prior. She made 43.
She got belted for the losing 6, that last ball that will get replayed many times of Athapaththu hitting a lofted on drive way up into the sky. That was soft. Poor old Nadine, who batted all right earlier, but yeah, got on the wrong end of Chamari.
Emily Arla is, I reckon, one of these players Knight's talking about as well. She impressed so much in that first season of the 100. I think she's like 26 now or something like that. But, players who've got the ability to play at the next level but maybe haven't. Well, she, 7 overs, 4 maidens, 2 for 5. So she started the season well.
Can she do a John Arlott impression? That's what I want to know. Can she commentate her own bowling as she comes in?
That might add to it. Put her on the player mic and give her that challenge over the winter. Also, nice to see Katie George doing well, having had so many problems with her back. She's 25 now, Katie George. She's been on an England contract for years, but now back to domestic cricket. And a 2 for to start the season for that's right, for the Sparks. By far the game at around was the Southeast Stars, a thriller over the Vipers at Beckenham. The Vipers made 273 for 9 with Freya Kemp making 50. Usual suspects, Elwes and Adams getting starts. Then there was this twist I didn't see coming. So the Stars put on a massive 165-run partnership for the opening wicket. Bryony Smith, the captain, yeah, sure, we expect that. But Tash Farrant opened the batting for the Stars and made 94. So and laid the foundation. So 90 for Smith, 94 for Farrant, jug avoidance there. Both should have made hundreds. 20 overs to go. They needed about a run of ball. In walks Sophia Dunkley, 48 not out, steers them home with 3 balls to spare to knock off the juggernaut that is the Vipers. Tash Farrant, who had a stress fracture and missed all of 2022 and was back last year, but clearly used that time well on the sidelines, improving her batting. And she was in that England A trip to New Zealand last month, so she's still broadly on the radar, even if she isn't in the England first choice team. So well played, Tash.
Batted. I mean, yeah, it's not what you expect to see from her. International career, 18 T20s, 7 runs. Tash Farrant.
Yeah.
And, she's only got to bat 4 times, to be fair, but still, and 4 innings in one-day cricket, 42 runs. So, okay, well, they've spotted something, and I suppose there's a long tradition of, did you know they started as a bowler?
Yeah, I think she always had the technique. It was whether she had the opportunities. Yeah. It looks like she's going to get them this year at the Stars. And the Sunrisers smashed the Storm at Cardiff. The Storm were all out 114. Nicola Hancock, a very good signing for the Sunrisers, took 3 for 15. Of course, from Australia. Jodie Grewcock, who was playing for the England 19s, she took 3 for and then made 15 not out at the end in that chase with the Sunrisers winning by 8 wickets. So a good all-round option teenager there. And Grace Scrivens, who's the captain at the Sunrisers. They've made a big investment in her. 63 not out. It feels pretty clear to me that her time is coming. She'll be in that England senior side before long.
Okay. We will come back to the World Cup qualifiers and the Meg Lanning news. A lot of women's cricket stuff off the top of the show, and we've got some men's cricket stuff as well after the break. But first, we have to get to a bit of Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge, the game. We play, you pay, with the people who fund this program. That's where the paying and the playing. It is pay to play in Nerd Pledge, but it's not pay very much. It's whatever you feel like, because the number just has to relate to cricket in some way, and we have to figure out what the number means. We have a pledge in from Pat Dempsey. It's in Czech zloty. It is the zloty, isn't it, in the Czech Republic? No, it's not. That's Polish. Yes. It's Czech crown.
No, hang on.
Krona. It's Czech krona.
Krona.
I've got the zloty wrong before because it has a Z in it, CZK. So it makes me. It's like the Chennai Super Kings.
I'm doing a zloty on Storytime this week with Daniel Norcross. I've already seen that come through. Cool. So we're in the Czech Republic today, and we're in Poland later in the week.
Okay, we're in Czech krona, and it is 82.15. I don't know what a krona cent is, but it's 82 krona and 15 krona cents.
There's a clue. The currency is both a pure coincidence and a subtle clue. Move the decimal. Move the target. Much love, Pat. Thanks, Louis Richards.
Okay, 82.15. Move the decimal. Czech. Who had a bit of Czech heritage? Could it be a gentleman by the name of Jason Krejza? I think it could. And what did he take?
I can see what it's going to be. I can see what this is going to be.
215. Now, we have talked about the 8 for 215 at times before. It's the kind of thing that does come up from time to time. But it was still an interesting day to go back and watch it again and think about it again and think about the poor fate of Jason Krejza being one of the many post-Warne spinners.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because Norcross did a 20-minute answer on this about a couple of months ago. So we've got like the Krejza fest here. But Jeff, I'll back you to have a different perspective on it.
Well, I suppose it's. I was interested hearing one of the archive episodes the other day from 2015 where it might have been Vish was talking about the number of opening partners that Alistair Cook had since Andrew Strauss retired, and was talking about it as though it was a long list and was naming them all. But that only went up to 2015. Then there were about another 8 of them after that between then and right. The point where they actually settled on a slightly, well, I suppose even by the time Cook retired, they didn't really have the opening positions sorted out, and it's only been the Crawley Duckett axis more recently that's actually slowed that down. So in the middle of that run of Australian spinners, that's another one of those games you can play where you sit down and party trick stuff and pop quiz people, starting with Stuart McGill in the Caribbean in 2008, and then trying to, particularly if you have to get them in order, that's when it's really hard. You've got to get your when does Dan Cullen come in, and when does Nathan Horrocks first get involved, and when does Cameron White get his? That's 2008 as well, isn't it? In India, I deliberately haven't looked this up because I didn't want to make it too easy for myself. But
Bo Casson,
Bo Casson is the other.
Dan Cullen.
Cullen and Casson are the two sort of harder ones to remember because they were they only played the one each, didn't they?
I think so. Yeah.
Cullen plays the one in the West Indies, and which might be after McGill's wrist has gone, or maybe they play 2 spinners. I probably should have looked this up.
I think Cullen's is in Bangladesh and Casson's is in the West Indies, right. But I might be wrong. That's that weird time when I'm not following cricket quite so closely.
Yeah, but Krejza gets his opportunity in November 2008 in India in the 4th test in Nagpur. So this must be after Cameron White has already, he's still in the team at this point, Cameron White, but I suppose they figure that they need something else. They need more firepower. And it is interesting. I know we all know that it's a shitload. I know we know that it's 8 for 215 and that he then follows it up in the second innings with 4 for 143, which ends up being 12 for whatever, 300 and whatever that is. It's one of those, it's a set of figures you would never know how to feel about, I think. You'd be like, well, I did take 12 wickets and a lot of them were good players. But also a lot of them had made a lot of runs by the time that happened. We talked about Mohammad Asif on the show recently and the incredible delivery in 2006 that he gets VVS Laxman out with. And Krejza has his version of that in the second innings here, the one that spins. I think it spins further than, I can't remember an off spinner aside from Murali bowling a ball that turns that far. I was watching that back today and it pitches, as best you can tell, because the video is a bit shaky, it looks like it misses the foot mark outside the off stump. There's this big foot mark wide outside the off stump because Mitchell Johnson's playing in that game, and so they've got that left arm, and they've got Zahir Khan in the Indian team as well. So there's a big left armer's hole outside the right-hander's off stump, and it looks like the ball lands short of it, but maybe it just catches the edge where it's even more rough, and maybe it makes it turn even more. But it from almost off the strip, it comes back to hit leg stump, and it's. I wonder if Laxman got more of the best deliveries in cricket than others, because that's a couple that's hard to top.
Yeah, I think that was the lure of Krejza, is that he just gave it a massive rip. And look, most off spinners now do, and that might be partly needing to be more resourceful in the short form era. But yeah, his reputation was that he could turn it kind of like a leg spinner, but as an off break bowler, and thus his best deliveries would always have him in the frame. It was the consistency that ultimately let him down. went for all those runs along the way, taking a lot of wickets, and it was celebrated. But you're right, there was some complexity to that. And then, of course, when he wasn't able to bowl out South Africa in 2008 at the Wacker, and again, I'm going back over the Daniel stuff from a few weeks ago, but, that was, I suppose, on the surface, that was less willing to turn square, certainly less willing than Nagpur was.
Yep.
And then from there, he struggled to get back, although he did play... he did make the World Cup squad, didn't he, in 2011? He went to India as part of that cohort, but I don't think he played. Either way, his Test career ended in Perth with South Africa chasing down 400 plus.
Yeah, with those two matches to his credit. Yeah, so he gets going with Dravid for a duck, which is a nice way to start. But yeah, the ones that follow that, Sehwag for 66, Lakshman for 64, Ganguly for 85, Dhoni for 56, before he's able to clean up a few sort of through the lower order. And then, a slightly better bite of it in the third innings with Lakshman bowled by that miracle ball for 4 and Ganguly caught and bowled first ball. But yeah, then Dhoni for 55. So, runs are still being taken off him. They end up setting Australia 382 despite those 12 wickets, and Australia fall a long way short of that. But I did find a little bit of footage of him bowling to a very young Usman Khawaja in state cricket, and Khawaja's coming around the wicket to the left-hander, and he bowls him a doosra. He bowls him, and like a genuine doosra, and it is a little bit University of Western Australia. Like the footage is grainy, but it'd be interesting to see a more slow-mo version. But it fucking turns. He bowls. It's not quite the Lakshman ball in mirror image, but it's not that far off it. Like it pitches well outside the off stump. Khawaja shoulders arms, and it turns back in massively and knocks over off stump. It's an incredible bit of bowling. So I spent most of my afternoon down a rabbit hole looking up how to bowl the doosra, because it seems like such a complex thing and something that's gone out of the game to a large degree. But he had a genuine off spinner's doosra that turned about 3 feet to bowl a young Usman Khawaja.
Yeah, the control of being able to flick it at the very top of your fingers, isn't it, when you try and get the doosra out? I've got one of the red white balls in my hand right now, which I play around with. But you're trying to flick it like that. The way Sakla Mushtaq did it, really. And to do it without going beyond 15 degrees is bloody difficult. So, I don't know. That again might have contributed to why they were so keen on Croatia, that he had a bag of tricks that was sufficiently deep enough to get really good players out in different ways.
Anyway, Pat, there's a few reminiscences of JK, and if you want to play the game, you want to send us a number and see if we can figure out what it means. Patreon.com/thefinalword. Let's take a break. Final Word, Season 16, Episode 8. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. The show is presented to you by Westfield. Cricket, Adam, is about balance. This is Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. That's how they balance it out. They have 2 Westfields, one on either side of London. That's balance. You need balance at the crease so you can play forward or back. You need balance in the slips so you can snaffle catches. You probably don't need Gary Balance. Probably think we've reached that conclusion that and even Zimbabwe in the end are doing without him. Finding comfort is all about balance. Also, apparently, New Balance.
You can get your hands on their trackies, jackets, hoodies, oversized shirts, and lounge shorts from the New Balance Linear Heritage collection. From Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City today, and you'll discover a whole new level of comfort previously inaccessible to anyone not at the Rancho Relaxo. Very good. With a long summer ahead where you'll be parked on the couch watching the cricket, why not do it in the same kit as Joe Root, Pat Cummins and Steve Smith? Are you getting around in that? If you are, you're getting it right. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. Maybe we can get around in the New Balance clobber at the Westfield Nets. Yeah. I have advanced this idea. We spoke about it on Storytime last week. And as I mentioned on the Ireland episode, this is not a crazy idea. Okay. It may have sounded a crazy idea, having something of a show court cricket net at Westfield. Well, I'm running it up the chain. I think I believe in this as a project, and we will see what's possible by the end of the summer. So a cricket net where we can
you just want people to watch.
That can be an attraction.
You just want to bowl off spin and make people watch. I know what this is
Look,
about.
I know that it would be a very convenient way for me to net a lot.
Yeah.
Just go down to Westfield and bowl hour after hour. Difficult. No nets around where I live. Well, there's about half an hour I've got to go before I can find a credible net but that isn't completely stuffed. So yeah, I'm open to that. More than open to it. Come and watch me bowl. No, come and bowl yourself. Maybe one day. Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. Jeff,